Welcome to Fit2B Radio. Slip on your minimal sneakers, notch your headphones into your ears, tuck your smartphone into your pocket, and take us along for a walk while we talk. Or just grab a cup of your favorite drink and get on the floor and stretch a bit while we bring you all things fitness, core, and diastases recti related.
You guys ready?
Yes.
Yep. All right.
Born ready.
Born ready. I love that.
I love your first one though, when you're like, I wish I could just say all those things. I know. That is so bad.
Hey everybody, welcome to Fit2B Radio. My name is Chris Banky. I'll be your host today. I'm here with Beth Learn. She's the CEO and founder of Fit2B Studio. And we also have with us Heba Shaheed. She is a pelvic floor expert. She is the founder of the Pelvic Expert. She's got over 10 years experience as a physical therapist, and we're super excited to have you with us today on the program. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It's my pleasure.
Yes. So we always ask every guest where they're coming to us from. Where are you right now?
I am in Sydney, Australia, so I'm down under.
Fantastic. I feel like that might be as far away from the Pacific Northwest as you can possibly get. Like it's the other side, the whole other side. So it's a miracle of technology. So how long have you been there?
My whole life. I was born in Sydney, raised in Sydney, and I've been here my entire life. I've traveled around a little bit. Never been to the US, but yeah, I'm Aussie born and bred.
Wow. And so you love it. It's amazing there.
Yeah, of course. Like everyone. I mean, I think you take it for granted sometimes, but yeah, it's beautiful down here.
Okay. Well, I think we need to do a Fit2B on-site location and visit you because I've never been there, and I think that we need to do that one of these days. So let's write that down, Beth.
Okay. I'm all for going to Australia.
Yeah, I know you're for it. So how did you guys connect? What's the commonality for you two?
Oh, I don't remember honestly how I first connected with you, Heba. I found you through one of our other colleagues, probably Jessie Mundell or another pelvic floor expert. And I remember discovering you and being so intrigued by, honestly, your appearance. As you're a pelvic floor expert, but you have, is it a hijab? Is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah.
Yes. And I was like, what? Because I'm going to confess this straight up, everybody listening, you know, I'm this white girl over here in America. And I was thinking, huh? How, what? I didn't, for some reason, had a complete blind spot to women on the other side of the planet needing pelvic floor therapy. Hello. And
well, everyone all over the planet needs pelvic floor therapy, right?
Right. So I got onto your blog and I started reading some of the things that you wrote, and it blew me out of the water. The work that you do, the way that you do it, the way that you integrate your beliefs, but in such a tactful, respectful way. Mm-hmm. You're just so approachable, and the information you put out is amazing. I love it. I love sharing it. It's awesome stuff.
Thank you. I really appreciate that.
So you have a lot of experience. You've got a website, The Pelvic Expert. Can you give us a little background? I mean, you've been doing this work for a long time, but can you fill us in on your background?
Yeah, so I started off as a physiotherapist or physical therapist, as you're called in the US. And I've been working in this area for almost a decade. And the way that I got into it was through my own pelvic health issues. So in my first year out of university or college, as you call it there, I injured my pelvis pretty badly to the point that I couldn't actually walk. So I was in rehab for almost 9 months. And, I had completely atrophied in my right leg. I had a really major traumatic injury and I tore a lot of muscles. I got a lot of inflammation, tendonitis, bursitis, all the stuff that could possibly go wrong. I had that. And so it was my own journey of trying to find solutions to my pain. So by that point, I was in chronic pain. Like I was in agonizing pain, 10 out of 10 pain. I just couldn't see a way out of my pain. And so I thought, hey, here's this, I'm a physiotherapist. I should know all about pain. I know all about the muscles in the body, what's going on. And so at that point, I didn't know that there was a specialty area, women's health, pelvic floor, pelvic health. I didn't know that there was a specialty area for chronic pelvic pain. And so it was in my own research trying to find that, helping to help my own issues. That's kind of how I fell into it. And then I'm a bit of a nerd, so I wanted to know everything and how everything connects. And, not just fitness, but not just like pain, but also, nutrition and self-care and, the whole picture. And so, I spent a lot of years just really upskilling myself. So I have a lot of backgrounds in like nutrition, Pilates, yoga, chronic pain, birth education, just everything put together so I can provide this holistic experience for the women that I work with. And then after working in a private practice here in the Sydney city area for over 5 years, I then decided, seeing the gaps in women's healthcare, seeing that women just didn't have a clue what was going on in their bodies, why this stuff was happening to them, why don't they know about physio? I decided to set up the Pelvic Expert blog, and I started writing about my experiences and my clients and the things that I wanted people to know about and that women wanted to know about. And then I fell pregnant myself, had a baby, decided I was going to turn it into a business, and yes, here we are, the Pelvic Expert.
I remember, I think I found you shortly before you got pregnant, and a lot of your content was about endometriosis too, and we're going to be talking today about pelvic organ prolapse a lot, but we're going to have you back to talk about endometriosis specifically, because you shine in that area with some excellent resources. I know I just made some people really sad who were like, oh, I want to learn about that. Oh, I have to wait.
Got to subscribe to the podcast.
More than happy to be back and talk about endo.
Yes, because it affects a lot of women. But I followed you through your pregnancy. It was such a beautiful pregnancy, and you have a little girl, right?
Yeah, I did. She's a year and 3-4 months now. Geez, time flies.
Already. Oh man, wow.
So you've been following me for that long. I didn't even realize. Wow, that's I feel really special. Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, you're welcome. It's very insightful. You, like I said, you put out a really great content that's just solid. It's evidence based, backed up, and I appreciate that. There's a lot of fluff out there.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, unfortunately there is.
And misinformation.
Yeah.
Misinformation. So pelvic organ prolapse. So let's go high level. Let's start off just what is that? Let's talk about that.
Yeah.
So firstly, pelvic organ prolapse affects about 30 to 50 women roughly, and it can affect women who've given birth, or it can affect women who haven't given birth. So the most common times that women have prolapse are straight after birth. So it could be straight after your first birth. If they have a history of chronic constipation, that's a big one. And then during menopause, whether they've had children or not, those are the 3 times where women are most likely to develop pelvic organ prolapse.
Okay.
Now, think about it, the way that I like to explain it is quite visually, so people understand and can visualize what's going on. So I say, okay, imagine this room is like a pelvis, okay? And you've got 3 big balls hanging in the room, and they're hanging in the room by elastic bands, keeping them up in the middle of the room. Elastic bands kind of to the front and back, between the balls, to the side. Basically, these 3 balls are hanging there or held there because of this elastic tissue that's keeping it supported up there. So those 3 balls are your pelvic organs, your bladder, your uterus, and your rectum, okay? Mm-hmm. And underneath those 3 balls are your pelvic floor muscles. And your pelvic floor muscles kind of act like hands that provide some support from underneath to push up those organs. Now, what happens in pelvic organ prolapse is that you get an overstretch of those connective tissues, of those elastic bands, or you can have a tear of those elastic bands during birth. And so one or more of those balls can sit lower in the pelvis than it was originally. So instead of your bladder sitting up at the top of your pelvis, the elastic band that's holding it up, or the elastic band at the top or at the sides or the front or back, they can lose their tautness, and so that ball or the bladder then sits lower down, and it's sagging now, and it's putting pressure on your pelvic floor muscles, which are your hands of support. It's putting pressure on there, causing your pelvic floor muscles to either become inhibited, become weaker, maybe even overwork, or not even work at all because they're pushed out of the way.
Right.
So you can have a prolapse of your bladder, your uterus, your rectum. You can have a prolapse of one individual organ. You can have prolapse of multiple organs. And they're known by different things. Yeah, so cystocele for bladder, uterine prolapse for uterus, rectocele for the rectum.
That makes sense. That's a really good image. I have never heard that particular word image. That's perfect.
Well,
I can totally see it in my head.
Yeah.
So so somebody that's listening to this, what are the signs, the symptoms? Like how would they know this?
Mm-hmm.
What could be happening?
So there are a number of symptoms that women could be having, and the most common symptom is pressure. So people feel a sense of pressure or heaviness or dragging in their pelvis, and they notice it more usually if they've gone for long walks or they've had a long busy day or they've done a lot of lifting during the day. They feel this pressure sort of sensation. And some women, they don't even notice that they have it. They don't even notice that sensation of pressure until they go and see a women's health physical therapist and they tell them they have prolapse, and then they teach them how to fix it. And then they realize, oh, pressure sensation that I had is gone now, and they don't even realize that they had it in the first place. So that's the most common symptom. But then there are other symptoms as well. So people might feel lower abdominal pain. They might feel lower back pain. They might feel, they might see a bulge down there or feel a bulge down there. So that's like an obvious sort of feeling. And the other more common symptoms are actual issues with their bladder and bowel function. So they feel, I haven't completely emptied my bladder if they have a bladder prolapse. I haven't completely emptied my bowel if they have a bowel prolapse. I feel like I can't control my bladder or bowel. So they're having incontinence. They might be leaking from their bladder or from their bowel. There's a whole bunch of different symptoms that show prolapse, but those are the most common ones. But then even little ones like, when you go to the bathroom and you're weeing and your wee goes off to one side, or it starts and stops, or it's really slow, or there's a whole variety of different symptoms. You feel really constipated, feel like you can't get it out. So, anything that feels a bit off down there, if it feels like it's not functioning the way that it should, chances are that you have prolapse, especially if you've given birth or you're in menopause.
Right. That is such another good, clear explanation. And I think it also points to the reason why we want to see, I want to see my clients, my fitness clients, go get physio or physical therapy, because it's not just a case of, hey, do your Kegels. There could be things that have been displaced or prolapsed that need to be manipulated back where they belong, so that you're not just tightening muscles around them in the wrong spots.
Yeah, and so one of the things that I highly recommend in women who have pelvic organ prolapse, and this depends on where you live in the world. So I know in the US you probably need to see a gynecologist for this, but here in Australia, physiotherapists do it. So one of the most useful things that you could do for pelvic organ prolapse is to have a support device fitted. And this is known as a pessary, and it can come in different shapes and sizes. So there's a ring-shaped pessary, there's a cube-shaped pessary, there's lots of different shapes and sizes. And what happens is we check what's the sizing of the woman, because every woman's different, and then we insert this pessary or this support device in through her vagina, kind of like how you would put a tampon in. Put it in through the vagina and kind of let it go up. And what it does is, if one or more of your organs are sagging down, it will push them back up. It'll put them back into where they should be.
Right.
And essentially these pessaries, they sit on top of the pelvic floor. So if your pelvic floor muscles were moved out of the way because of this prolapse, like maybe this prolapse, it's pushed your pelvic floor muscles out of the way and these muscles can't work. Once you have that pessary in, those pelvic floor muscles can come back together and you can actually engage them. This is the issue that a lot of women with pelvic organ prolapse have, is that they're like, I'm doing my Kegels, I'm doing my exercises, but I still can't feel my pelvic floor muscles working. I can feel them squeezing, but I can't feel them lifting.
Right.
And that's because when you have a prolapse, you're actually pushing those lifting portions of your pelvic floor muscles out of the way. And so then you only feel the squeezes working. And so once you have that pessary in, now you've moved those organs back up, the pelvic floor lifters can come back on and you can actually feel the muscles engaging. So, I often say get a support device so that you can have the best possible contraction from your pelvic floor as possible. And then your pelvic floor should be working with other muscles in your body. It's, Kegels are not the answer. A lot of women think, just do 10 Kegels at the traffic lights and that'll fix my problems. No, it's not like that. It'll never work like that. In some cases, it might help with a bit of incontinence, but for long-term strength and stability for life, you need the entire muscle system working.
Right. So basically, one of the things that it sounds like is that too often women think, I just need to do some exercises, but the exercises by themselves are often not enough. sounds like.
So Kegel exercises in isolation, no, they're not enough. They're only one part of the puzzle.
Right.
The human body, there's no muscle in the human body that works in isolation. And
Right.
the muscles in your body don't work in isolation. They work with your fascia or your connective tissue. And then that system doesn't work in isolation. You need to make sure that your nutrition is good so that you don't put
Right.
pressure down on your pelvis. You know what I mean? So the whole body is like a complex system that works together.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and I like the analogy of, we as humans, we're created for community, and our muscles are the same way. Like, they're not designed to work by themselves. They're created for community.
Yeah.
That's right. Exactly. Together. That's a very great analogy.
So how does that, so you mentioned nutrition, how does that tie in to gut health and the prolapse? I mean, are they tied together? I mean, how do they connect?
Absolutely. So, well, firstly, let's think anatomically. The nerves that supply your pelvis, so the same nerves that supply your pelvic floor muscles and your pelvic organ, they also supply your abdominal area. So they supply your abdominal organs as well. So if your abdominal health is out of synergy and it's not working so great, this is going to put the same type of out of whackness in your pelvis as well. And you have to think about it. When a woman has pelvic organ prolapse, her organs are sagging down, right? So there's increased pressure downwards on her pelvic floor and on her pelvic organ. And you can get that same pressure. So that same pressure that you can have on your abdominal organs can then transfer into your pelvic organ. So you have to think about it. If a woman has pelvic organ prolapse, if she's constipated and her bowels are full, like her intestines are full, she hasn't emptied her bowel in a couple of days, or maybe she's only emptying bits and pieces, there's now this increased pressure, right? This increased pressure that's coming down onto her rectum, and then that pressure on the rectum can then transfer onto her bladder as well. So you can see that there's this kind of down the chain thing. Then the other thing is, if a woman has food intolerances, right? Like let's say she's intolerant to gluten, and every time she eats gluten she gets so bloated and she's in pain, and she's got abdominal pain, she's just gassy, just like all of those symptoms, right? That's the same thing. You've got this pressure. Well, that's what bloating is, right? You've got this pressure in your abdomen that's then getting transferred down into your rectum and onto your bladder, and it can make your pelvic organ prolapse symptoms worse. So that's why whenever I work with women who have prolapse, exercise is not just the answer. You have to make sure that your entire body is working well. Reduce the bloating, eliminate food intolerances, like eliminate the foods that are making you feel sick, right? And so the better your gut health is, the better your gut bacteria is, the better you're going to have, better pelvic bacteria, and less constipation, better bowel movements, and your entire health is so much better just for emptying whatever's in your intestine that's building up. So it's kind of, what you eat is going to affect what comes out as well, right? And how that pressure goes on your pelvic floor.
All connected.
Now, I originally came to pelvic stuff via diastases recti stuff, because that's my field of specialty. And I, just a few years into studying that, sooner really, began to realize, everything's connected, and the transverse abdominis coactivates with the pelvic floor muscles, coactivates with adductors. There's all these little communications that happen up and down the chain. And what I didn't realize right away, though, was how those two play off of each other when it comes to digestion. So, you have the bloating, and then that's going to pressurize your belly, which can make a diastasis worse. And then it's also pressurizing and making pelvic floor issues worse. Can you validate that? Have you noticed that as well? I mean, I'm sure, but.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a huge connection between diastasis recti and pelvic organ prolapse and pelvic floor dysfunction. In fact, the research shows that women who have diastasis recti, about 2/3 of them are going to have pelvic organ prolapse or bladder control problems or bowel control problems, because again, the entire system is connected.
Right.
And when you lose pressure in the abdomen, which is what happens in diastasis recti, like you've lost that support system for your pressure system, then it's going to go somewhere. It's going to translate somewhere. It's either going to go out, which is why your belly pooches, or it's going to go down, which is why women have bladder or bowel control problems or heaviness in their pelvis. So absolutely, there's a huge connection. And then, of course, the nutrition connection there as well, because if you're bloated, it's going to go out or it's going to go down. It's the same thing.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. What she said, everybody, what she just said. So succinct, way better than I could even sum it up. Good stuff.
So it seems like one of the things that you're saying is, and this is a common theme that we see with a lot of guests, but it's kind of a shame because it's a common theme because it's not common. It doesn't seem to be commonly approached, which is it's all connected. You have the nutrition component, you have the physical component, you have the fitness component. And if you're not paying attention to all those different pieces, then there's going to be weakness in those areas. And that's, I think, what can affect you. That's what I'm hearing overall messages.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. and people often don't connect those dots. And I think that there is a huge disconnect, especially in the United States, when it comes to food and nutrition. We are just really, really behind on how our nation deals with proper nutrition and with helping people understand that how we eat does impact our lives. And we're we're the fast food nation. Mm-hmm. And we're about the here and now and your way, right away, and all these little slogans that we have. You know, we invented McDonald's, right? So, and then I had a friend one time who said about coconut oil. He's like, I just don't understand why something that you would eat, you would also rub on your body, or why something you would rub on your body, you would also eat. Like, that just makes me not want to use it at all. Like, anything that I can do both things with, I don't want any part of. And I was thinking, that's the opposite for me.
Like, exactly. Like, what you can put on your body, you should be able to eat, and what you eat, you should be able to put on your body, right? Absolutely.
Right.
and so, you know, it's funny because we use coconut oil when I was working in private practice as a physiotherapist, and we do vaginal exams. Mm-hmm. So I would use coconut oil for my assessments because I didn't like a lot of the, the lubricants out there because of all the, parabens and phthalates, all those synthetic sort of things aggravate women's tissues. So using something natural like coconut oil, it's like a no-brainer.
Yeah. Whereas when I went to PT for my neck, and this is external, I brought some coconut oil with me one time and asked her to use it. And she's like, I can't, that's not approved by our clinic. And it's not an FDA reg. And I was like, what? But I brought it. I'm asking you to put this on me in place of that other junk you've been using. And she's like, I'm sorry, I can't do that.
Wow.
Okay.
I'm glad we don't have that sort of issue here.
I know, right? I mean, just all those little mental blocks and mind blocks that we have around these different things that are connected, and they impact us up and down the chain for sure.
Yeah. So if a woman is feeling, maybe they're listening to this and she's thinking, yeah, I think that might be me. I think that what they're talking about, I'm suffering from some of those symptoms. What's the first thing that she should do? Like, what's your advice to her?
Mm-hmm.
So definitely speak to a pelvic floor physical therapist. So, I don't know how easy it is in the US, the system, but here it's really easy. Like, we are primary care providers, so we don't even need a referral. You can just call us up and book in an appointment, and you might get in next week. So, definitely try and touch base with a pelvic floor physical therapist because, as I mentioned before, we do vaginal examinations, and part of our vaginal examinations always includes a prolapse assessment. And women think, prolapse, I have to go get an ultrasound, or I have to go see a gynecologist. And people think that it's this complicated thing, but it's not. We can actually see if a woman has prolapse, what grade of prolapse she has, how many different types of prolapse she has from a simple vaginal examination. So we can take a look. We just look down there. We get them to do a little technique called a Valsalva, which is basically just bearing down, and we see, does her walls move? Does the front wall move? That means that she might have a bladder prolapse. Does her back wall move? That means she might have a rectum prolapse. Does the middle move? Does she have a uterine prolapse? So we look at that and we can grade it, and then based on that we can also we can assess the strength, endurance, repetitions, all of that of her actual pelvic floor muscles. How well is she activating her pelvic floor muscle? Can she activate them at all? And we know that, there are quite a significant number of women who have no idea how to engage their pelvic floor. And sometimes that vaginal exam is what gets that, okay, that's what you mean. That's how I switch them on.
Right.
So definitely engage with a physical therapist. And if you can't, or it's too difficult, it's too expensive, or whatever it might be, this is what we do here at the Pelvic Expos. We support women anywhere in the world from the comfort of their own homes. We have a community of experts and women who support each other who have pelvic organ prolapse. So you're more than welcome to reach out to us. So thepelvicexpert.com. But definitely try and see a women's health physical therapist. That would be my first sort of thing, just to get a diagnosis, find out what's going on in your pelvic floor, and then start a treatment plan. And, the thing is, a lot of people think, I need to go and have surgery now. Like, if I have prolapse, I have to have surgery. And actually you don't. Like, so many women still want to have more kids, or many women don't want to have to go down that surgical path. And we know that surgery itself has a lot of negative things, especially now with these class actions for the mesh, which is happening in the US and in Australia and in the UK when it comes to the mesh surgery for prolapse. And we also know, unfortunately, that the surgery for bladder prolapse is actually really unsuccessful. And, most women have to, or about a third of women have to go and have a second surgery on top of that, right? Because it fails so often. So, we know from research that a structured pelvic floor exercise program, a pessary, all of these things, you can have as up to 84% success rate, right? You don't need to go down that avenue of having to have surgery. So, don't feel like it's the end of the world. It's not a death sentence. I've worked with women, over the last decade, getting them from, quite significant prolapse to things like CrossFit, running, martial arts, boot camps. Like, it's not the end of the world. You can do whatever it is that you want to do. You just need to know how to engage your support system and what you need to do to get that support. And it could be the use of that pessary or that support device.
Right. Now, you mentioned how in Australia, where you are, physical therapists, physiotherapists are primary care, your direct entry. That is the case in my state. I live in Washington State in America, but it's not the case in all states. Usually they have to go to a doctor and get a prescription. The doctor is examining them. Oftentimes the doctor is trying to get them to do surgery. They don't even want to prescribe physical therapy. Finding a physical therapist that is a specialist in pelvic floor, that's not just going to tell them to do Kegels and instruct them how to do Kegels and send them home, is difficult. It's ridiculous how few true specialists we have here. And
that's surprising, because I was under the impression that you guys had a lot of them, just based on Facebook groups and stuff like that. I was under the impression maybe it's just not widely known, because I know we have the same problem here in Australia, is that women don't know that women's health physiotherapists exist, and doctors don't know, and specialists don't know. So it might be just a gap in education of the community, rather than a gap of actual specialists. So I could be wrong. I don't know what it's like in the US, but
I'm in that women's health physiotherapist group. I studied pre-physical therapy in college, and so I got into that group, and it's okay. There's thousands of women, but when you think about, there's 300 million people in America alone, and that's not even one per city. I mean, that's not even one per county. The amount of physical therapy. It's
the problem that we have. It's the same thing with other areas of medicine too, like naturopathic medicine and some of these other things, where there are pockets where it's readily available. Like in the Pacific Northwest, where both Beth and I live, there's a lot more availability, even on the East Coast. But if you go to the middle of the country in the South, there's a lot less availability for some of these things. Yeah. So that's where I think it's really important for women. They need to figure it out. Like they need to keep trying. Just because there might not be somebody in their hometown, they need to keep trying. They need to visit your website. Information there, right?
That's exactly why I set up the Pelvic Expert, because I was having women from all over the world reaching out saying, where do I find this information? Like, who do I speak to?
Right.
So, like, for me, I mean, I love helping everybody, but I'm not so much interested for women who have readily access in city areas. Like, for me, I care about the women in rural, regional, institutional, and, you know, areas like you're saying where there's one therapist per whatever 100,000 people. Like, you know, that's the women that I care about. That's the women that I try to reach out to, because I can help them, you know, with my expertise from online. And yeah, like, I'm more than happy for them to reach out to me. I'm pretty much an open book. So,
and the real message. Oh, go ahead.
And then getting them there, though, too, and I'm sure you've encountered this, is that the women who are in those rural settings, and in America, that would be the Midwest, and, you know, kind of we call it the Bible Belt here, where there is a lot of taboo, a lot of shit. We don't talk about that. We're ladylike. We don't talk about that. We're proper bells. We don't. And we, you know, I've mentioned in another episode, but something I have frequently heard is, pretty girls don't talk about that. Nope. And those parts are dirty. You know, there's just some really, really horrible stigmas. And so getting them to understand they need physical therapy, and then getting them past the bridge of understanding that it's going to likely involve some internal work. Instantly there's this, oh, no. Ain't nobody looking or touching down there. No way. Places where the sun don't shine.
I'm surprised and partly not surprised. So I'm partly surprised because, you know, being an Australian watching US television shows, you just see that everyone's so open on TV. You just assume that, oh, all Americans must be like that. So I'm kind of surprised in that sense. But then I'm not surprised because I face the same sort of things here. Like, when I was working in women's health physio, so I'm also not surprised. I know my daughter's just made an appearance. But I'm also not surprised because when I went into women's health physio, I had these preconceived notions that, you know, that Muslim women, for example, were going to be more uncomfortable about having vaginal exam, and that, you know, Australian women and Anglo women would be totally okay with it, like they wouldn't have an issue. But I saw these same sort of things here as well, like a lot of you know, just women in general, like Australian women, regardless of which race or background they came from, were also uncomfortable about, you know, I mean, like, we would have phone calls, and as soon as we told them you have to have a vaginal exam, it's like, oh, I'll call back later. So, you know, but we make a note to make sure that we always tell women over the phone so they don't have a shock when they come in on their first assessment. But yeah, like, it's I guess it's just a societal sort of thing. Like, I mean, you know, that area is, you know, it has been a taboo topic for a very long time, and even though there is that openness today, you know, a lot of us still have our beliefs as well.
Well, and, you know, like you said, if you just judge it based on like American movies, that's the real irony, is people will watch stuff, but they're not necessarily living that out. They'll watch a lot of things that they'll never do, and I think they actually use that to justify some of the things they watch, but that's a whole other can of worms. We won't go there right now. But when they actually get to the point of they're ready to have an appointment, I find that there's a lot of education that has to happen about, or with teaching them that it's okay to be touched, and that it's okay to have help in this area, and that getting help in this area is crucial to them being strong again. And we were talking about this in the pre-show. I'm just going to jump right in. We were talking about how women they can martyr themselves. And I know you and I both, like, I thought what I thought and you thought what you thought, and turns out there's a lot of similarities. And one of those similarities is women that kind of lay themselves on this altar of motherhood and think that they're supposed to be broken.
I know, like, there is this issue that we have, like, globally, like, you know, women and mothers in particular have to be martyrs to their bodies, right? Like, we give birth, we should expect that things are going to go wrong, and we should expect that we have to live with the consequences of, you know, whatever it is that we had. And we should put ourselves last. We should put our husbands first, or our spouses first. We should put our partners first, or we should put our babies and children first. And you know, our body just kind of keeps falling apart and wearing away. And we're not, you know. And this is the issue that I face even today. Like getting women to commit to their exercises, commit to their bodies, take care of themselves. It's extremely difficult. Like they just, you know, I almost have to like beg them to do the exercises sometimes, right? And this is the thing, it's like, oh, I just have time, I have this, I have that, I have this, I have that. What about 10 minutes for yourself and for your body, not just for today, but for tomorrow and the rest of your life, and for your motherhood, and for your, once your kids leave the home too, like, you know, you're in this body for life, right? So you've got to take care of it today, because if you don't, you know, it's not going to just miraculously get better. Like these things need help, right? Right. Just like you said before, we need community. Well, your body needs a community of muscles and a community of the foods that we eat. And
one thing that really intrigued me about your website right away, and this was years ago, and I couldn't find it now, but you had this beautiful blog about some of the ways that your faith actually encourages women, and more so than mine ever did, to understand their bodies and take care of their bodies, specifically their private parts and their sexuality. Are you willing and would you be so kind as to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So I think one of the things that a lot of people get confused when it comes to religion and culture is a lot of women and a lot of people put their cultural values on top of the religion and perpetrate that as religion, right? But within Islam, we're taught a lot of stuff about our bodies, and especially the woman's body. So we have a lot of evidence-based, as we like to call it, when it comes to what is healthy, what are healthy periods, how long your period should last, what constitutes a period, and then a lot of exceptions for women when they have periods. So, for example, like right now it's Ramadan, right? And in Ramadan, we don't need to fast when we have our period. And it makes sense because you're losing a lot of blood and you're tired and you've got mood things, and, like not all women that have periods, but a lot, many women do. And so we're exempted from fasting so that we can, make sure that we're properly hydrated, proper nutrition, emotionally okay, so that we don't wear ourselves down. And then the other thing is, like, when women are pregnant, when women are breastfeeding. So like right now I'm breastfeeding. I tried to fast this month, but I couldn't. I only fasted a few days because my milk just went, and then it was painful for me to try and breastfeed physically, but also for my daughter, she couldn't get the milk. So, so then I said, okay, for myself and for my daughter, I'm not going to fast. And we have these exemptions, and sometimes like culture comes into it, and a lot of people are like, no, you have to fast. It doesn't matter. Like, it's this cultural thing that they bring from, I don't know where, like, force that we have to be martyrs again to our bodies. But we don't. Like, if you go deep into the religious scripture, there's clear outlines, and women, who are breastfeeding or pregnant, who are on their periods, they don't have to fast. So yeah, like we have a lot of rulings and a lot of evidence when it comes to, even understanding our body parts, like where's the urethra and the vagina, and what's the difference, and like the difference between, and we have certain things that we can't do, like within our religion, we can't have certain types of like, for example, we can't have anal sex, and there are reasons behind that. And all of that is explained to us, so that it's not just these are the rules. It's like, physiologically, medically, these are the reasons why.
Like you said, physiologically and medically, and for health reasons, I totally get that. And I this is where I think there's this beauty in again how we were created, and in believing in this loving design, that it's not about these laws and doing things a certain way just to do them a certain way. It's because there's when we do them that way, things are healthier, but there's a freedom, and there's these exceptions, and there's this beauty to it. And that I could talk about that kind of thing all day. And just the way that it teaches people passively, but also actively, to respect their bodies and to understand their bodies, right? That's so neat. And I didn't know. I had no clue. And so it gave me a lot more respect for Islam. And and just intrigued me because there's so much hush hush, at least the way I was raised in the Christian faith. But when you actually dive into the scriptures, some of the same things are there.
Mm-hmm.
It's
absolutely, and we see the same thing in all the scriptures, like Hindu scripture, Christian, Jewish scripture. Like we have these things, but because of our cultural nuances, we've piled these things on that have kind of distorted, what we believe and what the world believes. Of these. If you get to the root of all of these different religions, like, we have very similar beliefs and we have similar approaches. It's just kind of been lost over the generations.
Right. Well, and I think I'm just giddy to talk to you too, because it's like, we're really different, but our passion is the same. Right. And it's like, you're on the other side of the world and you come from a different religious background, but we're both serving women in this authentic way that is really nerdy. And we just both love what we do. And I don't know, it's just been such a delight to talk to you. And I can't wait to have you back on to talk about endo and discuss that, because wow, that is another topic we can unpack.
It's coming.
Oh, definitely. And thank you so much for having me. It's truly been a pleasure. And I hope, all the women who are listening, you've, come to terms a bit more with what pelvic organ prolapse is. And hopefully if you have any of these signs and symptoms, you can seek help.
Well, and I hope they also take away that no matter what background they have, hopefully we've blown some of those barriers out of the water. Like here you and I come from a couple of the most conservative, at least what people tend to think. I like to say I'm a few wild hairs to the left.
It doesn't matter, what race, background, religion. Exactly. It doesn't matter where you're from. We're all women, and we can, we're all entrusted with this body that we should be taking care of.
Right. Absolutely. Amen.
All right.
Wait. Oh, there she is. We have to ask you one more thing, and that is, what is your favorite exercise?
I would have to say squats are my favorite exercise. They are like the best exercise for everything in your body. And they're so functional, and your pelvic floor works and it relaxes, and your glutes work and they relax. And I love squats. Awesome.
Well, I agree. We recorded a whole podcast about squats. Chris didn't think we could do it, but we did.
I was proved wrong. Squats are amazing. I came to learn that.
Yes. Well, Thank you again so much. It's been an honor.
Yeah.
Thank you. It's been my pleasure.
Well, that was easy. Thanks for listening. I really hope that you join us in our community over at Fit2B.com. You can join as a member for one low monthly rate or an awesome yearly rate that includes everything. Also, don't forget to subscribe to this podcast and follow us on our social media. On Twitter at Fit2B, on Instagram at Fit2B Studio, and on Facebook under Fit2B Tummy Safe Fitness. See you soon.